Happy Friday, everybody. We're here again, week 44. I'm all fired up this morning. I've had a week off, well, I wouldn't say week off, a few days off stitching, and I just got up this morning and thought, right, let's crack on and get on with something. So we're on week 44. Hopefully last week you enjoyed the pumpkin. Looking outside my window, we went out yesterday to Grossington, and I've really noticed all the leaves changing colour. So we're going full on autumnal today. So I've gathered together a range of threads going from sort of like your pale greens and yellows to your rusties and your oranges and whatever colours you happen to have. And then, let's move that out of the way, I've got a few little beads, and fabric wise, because quite orange, I think orange and blue, when you look out, I'm looking out my window now, I've got like all the orangey trees and the blue sky, so that's sort of themed my colours. So I've got it's a bit of denim from some old clothes that I've got as my background piece, and then I've got a little bit of dyed blanket and a little bit of lace just to pop in there. Lace is brilliant. If you want to knock it back, just dye it in some tea. Gives you quite a nice colour. So we're going to build up like a little land at the bottom, and then we're just going to enjoy a little bit of stitching. So I'm going to go with a little bit of my pale blue. So I'm just going to go for some little rectangles. I say rectangles, I might have to do a bit of a point. Where's my template gone? Template, where have you gone? Just been using it just this very second. There it is. Just use that for my point. That way around. No, too big. Yeah, there we go. Okay. And I want to take it to about there. Just trim a little bit off the outside. Awesome. Right, so that's given me my little bit of background. There we go. Now move these out the way. Right, then I'm going to go with my orange. I'm not normally a very orangey kind of person really, but let's go for it. That's where the lace is going to come in, because I don't mind the orange, but it is a little bit in your face. So I'm going to use the lace then, just to knock it back. Right. This just a little bit smaller. There we go. I've just got it in a hoop, 'cause at first I thought it's going to be easier to stitch it in the hoop. Now I'm not wondering whether or not it needs to be in the hoop, but anyway. So all I want to do with the lace is I just want to knock it back just a little bit. Take that right to the edge so it goes over. There we go. Around. I've just done that the wrong way around, so we'll do it the other way around then. There we go. Sorted. Right, grab a pin. Just pop that in so it just holds it in place while I start a little bit of stitching. So the first stitching we're going to do is just going to anchor this down. So we're just going to use some little straight stitches. Out of the way now. Okay, right, we'll go with I've got a variegated thread. Oh, I had a variegated thread all threaded up, and I've now unthreaded it. See, I was all ready, and then I wasn't. I think I'm getting ready for some new spectacles. Right, there we go, we're all done. Right, so just going to do just some little straight stitches just to start trapping this down, so they can be varying lengths, which is just going to mean that we can take the pins out and then really crack on with our stitching. I think that's my favourite word at the moment. It's crack on. Crack on. So I hope everybody is well on this lovely Friday. I was like in two minds what to do, because obviously it's bonfire night coming up, or it is bonfire night. I can't remember what the date is today. But we did a bonfire tag. So if you fancy doing bonfire-y things, go and have a look at last year's tag on YouTube. Could do another one. It was just little fireworks that we did last year, but I went out yesterday, and because the colours were so beautiful, and I love autumn, absolutely love autumnal colours. There's just so many, and I just love it when you've gone out and everything just seems really green, and you can go out the next day and it's like somebody's just sort of diluted the world. Like the greens start knocking back and you start beginning to see all the different colours coming through, especially if you're going somewhere and there are a range of different trees. That can look awesome as well, because they all sort of change colour at different rates. Right, what I've got to try and remember with this bit now is to keep my stitches upright. So they can range from going on all 3 bits, just 2 bits, 1 bit in the background. But what this is doing is it's beginning to give us a little bit of background stitching. But it's also just making sure that we've got everything stitched down. We're going to keep stitching on the top of it. But what I can do now is take those pins out. And I know I've got this securely fastened to the background. So I've got a range of threads now for the next bit. So I've got a slightly thicker thread to start off with, and then I'm just going to get thinner and thinner. So I've got one of my sheepy threads to start off with. I've got a stranded embroidery thread where I've just taken 1 strand out, and I've also got just some dyed threads, some cotton. I think this was in a pack that I got. It says Craftland. I think it was just in a pack that I just happened to have, but it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous orange. Right. Okay. Right, what we're going to do first is we're going to just give ourselves some little bits here, and we're going to do some big stitches, and then we're going to do some colonial knots on the end. So I'm going with my thicker thread first. So we're sort of creating this a little bit, I suppose, like a little mini landscape, but it's not a mini landscape, it's just some embroidery that's sort of inspired by the colours and just textures, I suppose. So I'm going to do a stitch upwards. I'm not going to pull it too tight, I want to keep it a little bit looser. Then I'm going to come back up next to where we were. Now you could do a pistol stitch if you want, but I'm going to do a colonial knot, which is a figure of 8 knot. Okay, so what you do, you've got this thread here, you're going to go underneath that thread, and then this thread here in your hand comes over the top. So what you create, she says, there is a figure of 8, and then you're just going to go back down where that thread originally came up. Now you don't want to pull it too tight, because we want to get a really, really nice loopy little thread. Okay, so I'll do that again. Up from the bottom, a bit higher. Don't pull it too tight because we want it to be a little bit looser. So I'm coming up just next to where we were. Point my thread. This is my thread in my hand. So I'm going to go underneath, so well, over the top and underneath, and then that thread goes over the top and it forms a figure 8. And then I'm going to go back down. I'm not going to pull that too tight. So I want to keep a nice loopy little knot. Okay, so do a few of these. Odd numbers work well. So don't pull that too tight. So I want it to feel a bit organic. If you pull it too straight, it just looks a bit not organic. Oh, I don't know what I've done with my needle there. There we go. Oops. Right, so I've got this thread over the top of the thread and underneath it to create your first loop, and then that thread goes over the top. And when you look down on it, you should be able to see that figure of 8, and then go back down. Try and get 5 in. Hopefully I'll have enough thread. Okay, so over the top and underneath, and that comes over the top. When you go back down, if you just pull that a little bit, you'll be able to control how much is going to be loopy at the bottom. Oh, voice has gone. I'm just going to have enough. That was good planning. Underneath, over the top. And just pull it a little bit. Now you can play around if you want to do pistol stitches, but I'm going to put little beads in these. If you want to do pistol stitches, feel free to do a pistol stitch. Totally up to you. Remember, these videos are just a prompt. They're not telling you exactly what you've got to do. Okay, and then it's just got a sewing thread. And all I was going to do, got a little thing of beads. I was just going to pop a little bead just in each one. Bead. No, she says she was going to do that. I just thought I'd checked my needle that the beads would come through. Obviously didn't check that one. Try a different one. Go. There we go. So just coming right up. Oh, sorry, I didn't realise I wasn't showing you there what I was doing. Coming right up the middle of my little knot. Just getting a little bead. Just back down. So I'm just popping a tiny little bead in the centre of each one. Just thought it'd be kind of cute. So this is our background, and then we're going to focus everything else now on the actual bits that we've stitched down. Yeah, I should have checked more of these beads, I think, beforehand. I think I was being jolly optimistic that they were all going to go through. I would normally use a beading needle, but when I checked I thought this one was going to work. Obviously it is, but just on selected beads. Look. Go, that's it, a little bead inside each one. Just thought it'd be kind of cute. Might put some beads as well in the bottom bit think if I'm going to do that, I do need to thread up my beading needle. Just makes life a little bit easier. They're just a pain to thread up. Right, there we go. Pop them back in that box. I'm going to put the lid on the box because I made a horrible mistake the other day. I have a stack of beading boxes on my side and I knocked one off, didn't I? I'm still finding beads now. It's a bit bonkers. Right, there we go. Focus, there we go. So we've just got some little beads just in the middle of those colonial knots. Right, so let's go on with the next one. Start doing French knots. So I'm going to do a little swathe of French knots, just starting at one side and just working my way across. She says, but for some reason that doesn't want to go through. Oh, it's because I've gone through the knot. I hate it when that happens. It's when I've done my knot on my thread and because I've gone back down the same hole. Your needle doesn't want to go through because you've tagged in the knot. There we go. Right, so start off with some French knots. I'm going around about maybe 5 times because I've got quite a fine thread. I do want to be able to build these up. Oops. And I might get a little bit of my other one. So with this, with your stitching, because it's a little bit like autumn, you want to start blending your colours. So I'll pop some of this and then I might get some of my green that I've just used up there and pop some of that in as well. So this is going to start attaching it down because I've used a bit of blanket. When you start stitching, it sort of gives it that quilted feel because you're pulling down. So it sort of gives you like a little trough of colour. Oops. So what I'm going to do is, got French knots here, I'm going to rethread my other one and I'm going to come back with some colonial knots over the top because they're not as tight as a French knot, and it'll just add again a bit more texture to what we're doing because autumn is all about layers and textures and changes in colour. Oh, it's just yummy. I just love the orange and the blue, especially when you get those gorgeous days where I've just looked out the window. Yeah, that blue sky's gone now. It's just grey. But I do love those crisp blue days, especially when it starts getting a little bit further on and we start getting a bit of a frost. So leave that at that for now. So just use whatever threads and fabric and stuff like that you've got. If autumn's not your thing or you don't happen to have anything that's autumnal, like in your colours, because I know I was struggling a little bit to find some oranges because I'm not, I don't know, you just discover every now and again there's just certain colours that you don't really have. So if you don't have any, remember we're not meant to be going out and buying things, just go with what colours you love, a nice colour combination. Or if you've got more blues than your oranges, you might go orange background with blue stitching. Totally up to you. Or you might just want to stick with loads of shades of green. Yeah, so you could have a really dark green background and then go really bright greens. Right, so colonial, so underneath, over the top, and just don't pull it down as much. just start popping these together. I think this is probably one of my favourite types of stitching, just where you've got lots of different stitches and you just building up colours and textures. That could be a bit of a hint to next week's flag. So next week's week 45. It's my birthday flag. It's the big 50 this year. Oh gosh. So yeah, so we're going to go full on with our flag for the love of stitch. That's basically going to be the theme of next week's flag. Because I had ummed and ahed about, like, oh, do you do a themed one, and is it like a cake or something like that? And I just thought, no. What's the one thing I love? And it's just stitching. So I thought, right, next week we are just going to stitch. Favourite colours, different weights of thread, and we're just going to go for it. And hopefully you can see I'm beginning to build up that texture. Colonial knots can be a bit hit and miss as to how loopy they are, but it's one of the things that I like about them. It's a little bit of an unpredictable stitch. Well, I'm assuming that you can be very predictable with the way that you get your tension on your threads and stuff like that, but I just like the fact that it's just a bit hit and miss. Mind you, I know some people say that their French knots are just a little bit hit and miss. Oh, that's kind of cute. One more there. Just tie it off at the back. There we go. There. Okay, so that's where we're up to at the moment. So it's a bit wishy-washy, so I want something a little bit darker. So I've got a stranded cotton that is quite a dark colour. So I'll come back in. What should we do? Do French knots, but I'm not going to pull it right down to the bottom. So I want to create some loopy ones. So you can create loopy French knots when you wind it round. Normally, if you want a really neat one, when you put your needle in, you pull that and you pull it really tight. If you want a loopy one, just don't pull it as tight and wrap it round lots. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'm not pulling that, I'm leaving it on my needle. So then when I pull it through, it ends up being loopy. And just start, like I've got some, oh, I like that, the darker colour, that's nice. To rethread my needle in a second. So I suppose that's the only disadvantage of doing super loopy ones that are wrapped around lots, is you do use up your thread quite quickly. One more out of that. Okay. So I'll carry on with that. Then what I'm going to add into it is I am going to do some beadwork. Got one threaded up. Oh, I've got one threaded up. At least I can show you what I'm going to start doing. You can see my beading needles because they're really fine. You can just use really fine needles, but my needles, they're not very straight. They end up being quite winky wonky. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some green beads, mainly because I don't have any orange beads, as I've discovered when I've just gone through all my stuff. So it's a little selection of beads. And what I'm going to do then to build up some more bits of texture is I'm going to bring my needle up and I'm going to make a little kebab. So I'm maybe going to put 5 little beads onto my needle. So I've got a little bead kebab, pop them down, and then just go down not that far away, because what I want them to do, is, you see it there, I want them to start being like little arches of beads. So do another one, get a few different beads on there. Ooh, I've got some nice bright green, is that a bit, I'll slap some of them in as well, a few bright green ones. Throw everything into the party. How many have we got on there? 5, we'll go 6, we'll go 7. So I've got 7 beads on my little kebab, pop them down, and then just come, not 7 beads length, and then, so there what I'm starting to do, you can see it just there, I'm going to start interspersing some little beads to really build up a texture. I definitely need a lot more orange stitching in here, so I'll do that as well. And I'll do like I normally do, I'll post some pictures so you can get some close-ups of what's going on. But that's all I'm going to sit and do now this morning. What a lovely morning to do, just carry on doing and building up. Lots of different textures. So it's quite nice if you've got an area on your flag that is a bit calmer, and then you have like focal points. I know some of our flags haven't been like that, but compositionally that's possibly what we should be doing. But I do like to break the rules every now and again. It's not always good just to stick with what you know. There we go. I'll just pop that one on. Right, I'll just tie that off on the back. So what I would always do when I'm stitching, especially adding beads, is probably after adding 3 or 4, I would tie a knot on the back and then carry on. Mainly because then if something happens to your thread, there's only that little bit that ends up falling off. That's from experience when I've done things before and I've ended up everything falling off, which has sort of made me cry a little bit. So there we go, that's what we're doing this week. Full on autumnal. It's going to be a really intense bit of stitching. I might come down here a little bit, maybe spread it out as it goes across. Our little straight stitches with our wiggly, there we go, wiggly little stalks on. And then I'm going to do, because I realised for some of them I haven't done any dangly down bits, and I have little tins of things, and I thought, oh, do you know what, I've got some little pom-poms which I think are kind of cute, so I thought I might just pick a few colours out and just add some little pom-poms on the bottom of my flag this week. So there we go, that's it, we're done. Week 44, I'll see you next week for birthday flag. That'll be exciting, and yeah, happy stitching everybody and happy Friday. Love and hugs.